So if you're like me and had horrible experiences buying a car, this video is for you. Now I've watched tons of YouTube videos teaching me the techniques of how to negotiate buying a car. And I wanted to know, will any of these techniques actually work? Well, I was fortunate enough to purchase a vehicle and test some of these things out. And I'm going to walk you through and tell you how it all went. Spoiler alert, it went great. Hello, I'm Derek and welcome to Hindsight 101, where you'll learn about things that will help you in everyday life. Now I've bought 6 cars in my lifetime. 4 used, 1 new, and 1 was a lease. And I'd say 5 out of those 6 times, I definitely overpaid for the vehicle. Paid much more than I should, but I didn't know any better, so lessons learned. Now I watched tons of YouTube videos teaching me how to negotiate when talking to a salesperson. Now there was one YouTube channel in particular, they're called Car Edge. They have a website and a YouTube channel that taught me the most, and that's the one I'm going to talk about. Now, full disclosure, I'm not affiliated with them or anything like that. I did pay for their service. They have a monthly service, a subscription for $10 because I wanted some extra stuff, but they offer a lot of free information on their YouTube channel and on their website. So it's worth checking them out, but I like to give credit where credit's due, especially since they help me out a lot. So they give so much information, you'd be surprised at how well it will go for you if you test it out as well. Now first, before we get into my story, let me show you the website and all the prep that I had to do before I actually even got to the dealership. So let's go check it out. Now here's the Car Edge website. Like I said, I did sign up for their monthly subscription, but I canceled immediately after because I only needed it for 1 month anyway, so that was fine for me. Now they offer a lot of services. I only used a small portion of their website because that's all I needed, but check them out if there's other things that you want to go look into. So first I went into resources. Resources, they have, like I said, a lot of other things. They have scripts, so if you're going to email the dealership, you can actually, they have scripts for different scenarios. But the one thing that I wanted was the cheat sheet. You click on this. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but it's a cheat sheet to walk you through step by step on what the salesperson's going to say and what you should say. And it takes you from the time you walk into the dealership to the time you're signing the paperwork at the finance office. So definitely something to check out when you're on the site. Now next, the other place I went to is the Car Edge report. Now here you can put in the vehicle that you want and it'll kind of give you a report, and I'll talk about that. Now one thing that I'm not going to do in this is I'm not going to talk about the vehicle that I bought. I want this video to be more about the experience and the things that I learned than more if you feel like I got a good deal on my car or not. So that's why you're not going to hear about my vehicle, but I'm going to use substitutions just for examples. Now here, I have one that I looked up. You get about 10 reports per month, so you can look up 10 cars per month and get a wealth of knowledge on it. So let's click on this 2017 Equinox. So for this Equinox, for 104,000 miles, it's roughly $10,000. So they have the fair price. And what that means is they're letting you know that the price that they're selling it for is actually a pretty decent price. It could be a little higher, a little lower, whatever, but it's actually a really good price. Now, if the car was a little bit more expensive, then you might have a little more room to work with, or if the dealership was overcharging you, then they would say like, no, they're overcharging you, it should be this price. In my case, there was about $100 difference, so I knew that they were offering me a good price for the car that I wanted. Now, if you scroll down even further, they'll tell you kind of in your area, what is the average? And they're saying this one is below average in my area, and what for the mileage, the type of car, the year, stuff like that. So this is great. We're actually getting a decent deal on this vehicle compared to other vehicles in the area. Now you can see here the graphic just kind of shows you where your vehicle falls with all the other vehicles. So it's pretty much on the low end, and that's where you want to be. So that's good. And then here they just talk about some negotiating things about how long it's been on the market, demand, mileage, time of the month. All that kind of plays into the factor that you can take with you to negotiate when you're in front of the salesperson. And then they also have the price history. This is the full price history. This didn't really mean much to me, but it might help you in some instances. So I almost forgot to mention, the other site that I used was AutoTrader. And then this is just an example, but AutoTrader also gives you history on the price of the vehicle. So for this one, the price fluctuated a little bit in the last month or so. With my vehicle, the price was actually less a couple months ago. So I knew I had some negotiating power. It was about $500 less. So I knew that I had at least $500 to play with when I want to negotiate. I can go higher, but I know definitely I could go to that 500 because they priced that vehicle at that price. And then it just kind of gives you an idea of where you rank as far as price, mileage, and days on the market. And it kind of gives you like, is this good or bad? Also, it gives you other listings in your area for similar vehicles, similar mileage, similar price. And so you're not bound to that one, but you can compare it to other ones in the area. So this is a wealth of knowledge. I actually do like this. So definitely check this out. Now, the other thing that I actually looked at as well on this site was the OTD calculator. This is the out the door calculator. So the out the door price, if say you were going to pay cash right then and there to take your car home, what is that price? And that's what they're going to calculate for you. So here, the vehicle that I bought was $11,495. I live in Ohio. And then they give you more stuff if you were going to finance. I got my own financing, so I didn't want to finance through them. So I just wanted the out the door price. Then you submit it. And then here, so for this vehicle, document fees, they kind of tell you that it's an estimated price for document fees. Some places could be higher, lower, but you shouldn't pay much more than this for document fees with the dealership. If they charge you more, like say, $1,000, then they're probably overcharging you. And then for sales tax, it's an estimate. For my area, it's actually 8%, so it's actually a little bit higher than this. And then for title and registration, those are accurate, $15 and $31. So adding all this up, it's really not that much, but you want to take this in with you so you know roughly how much you should be paying over the sticker price. Now keep this page in mind. It'll become very important because I'm going to be referencing it later when I get to the details of my story. So the one thing that I want to mention is, out of all this, I feel like the experience I had was really great. The only thing that I would have done differently is I would have asked for a lower price. I think I could have saved more money, but for this being my first time trying all these techniques, I think it went very well and I'm happy with it. But that's probably the one thing that I would change. Now, a couple things that you probably want to prepare yourself for before even walking into the dealership. One, you have to be willing to walk away. If you can't walk away from something because it's a bad deal, you lose your negotiating power. Be prepared that you're going to take it that day and remind them constantly that if you get the price you want, you will take it that day. That's very important. So remember that. Always say it every time they're trying to negotiate with you for something that you don't want. Tell them that you will take it that day if you get the price you want. And lastly, just have a positive attitude. I know previously I would just have such a negative attitude because I was just like, they're gonna cheat me. I don't like this whole process, the whole back and forth. Let me go talk to my manager. But think of it as a game. It's negotiating. Have fun with it and just enjoy the process because you're gonna get the car you want at the price you want. All right, enough of that. Let's get started with what happened. So first, I went out to the dealership just to test drive the car. I took my whole family. We all got in the car. I wanted to make sure they all fit. They were all comfortable. It was happy. It went great. There was nothing really else besides that. I wasn't planning on staying that long. I just wanted to test drive it. Now, the one mistake that I did make was as we were leaving, the salesperson asked me what my budget was. You don't want to tell them your budget. You actually want to answer and say, hopefully this car, and it's going to be within my budget. But I accidentally told them that my budget was $15,000. That was because my kids were being rowdy and I was distracted and I just wasn't paying attention. Now, this is going to come up later, so just keep note of that. So a couple days later, I made the determination I wanted the vehicle. So I went back by myself to test drive it again and hopefully purchase the vehicle. So the first thing I did when I got on the lot was talk to my previous salesperson and ask them to take me on a test drive. Now, this test drive is very important because at that point, you want to identify all the issues that you have with the car and just make them known. For me, the brakes were a little mushy. So basically what I mean by that was the brakes just didn't feel right. When I was pressing down, I had to press down pretty hard. And I made note of that. And I also mentioned that to him just nonchalantly, like, I don't know, these brakes are kind of weird. So, but keep note of that. It will also come up later. But the car was actually in pretty good shape from what I could tell. So that was the only thing I could really find wrong with it. But point out all the details that you may have issues with. Now, once we got back, to his credit, the person didn't really pressure me or anything like that. It was real cool. So what I said was, I'd like to know what is the price if I were to take this today. If I was going to give you cash right now, what would be the out the door price? And he was like, okay, are you going to finance or do you want to pay cash? And I said, we'll determine that once I know the price. You don't want to tell them because the biggest thing is definitely if you tell them you're going to finance, they're going to push you for a payment and not for the actual purchase price. And a dealership can get you to any payment that you want. If you want a $200 payment, they'll get you to that $200 payment, but you could be paying $7,000-8,000 more than you want it to, because they'll tack on extra stuff. So don't negotiate payment, negotiate the price. So once we sat down, he brought out this little scrap piece of paper, and he gave me 2 prices. Now, the first price said $11,495, and then it said tax and title, and then that was kind of just bundled together. He didn't break that out, and then it was $13,995. Now the second price was $12,995, and then again, tax and title were bundled together, and that was $14,995. So I asked him, how come there's different prices? Well, the person said, well, the 11 is if you were going to go with credit with us, financing, and then the 12 is if you're going to pay cash. He said, because it's more, because we're going to lose out on the financing where we make a little bit more money. And to my head, I was like, I don't really care about that. That's not my problem. But I told him just like, you know what? That's really not what I was looking to pay for. So we went back and forth for a while till he agreed to say, you know what? We'll go with the sticker price. So I was like, okay, let's see what that looks like. So he just put it out and said, you know, it's going to be $13,995. I was like, little confused. Can you tell me what tax and title is? And he was like, well, I don't know your tax rate, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? I know it. Let me just break out my calculator. Things look better when I can actually see it on paper. And that's what you want to do, because he put some hidden things in there. Let's just say that. So basically I did 8% for my area, and then it came out to around 1,900. And then I subtracted that from the 11, from the 13, and then the title pretty much came out to around 1,500. And if we reference the previous document about the out-the-door calculator, this is nowhere near what I'm actually supposed to pay. So I was like, really? Title is 1,500? He didn't really answer it. He kind of like hemmed and hawed and whatever. So I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to pay this price. So we kept going back and forth, and then he had to have a price. So at that point, I told him 1,300. And this is where I made the mistake. I should have gone lower, but I didn't. But keep in mind, I wasn't going to pay that 1,300, and I'll explain later why I wasn't going to pay that 1,300. But the one thing that I do want to reference is, if we go back to this cash price over here, you see that 14,995? That's eerily close to 15,000, and that was my budget. So this is why you don't want to tell them your budget, because they will definitely meet your budget. So now he knows my price is 13,000. So then he started to negotiate. So first he said 13,500. And I said, I will take the vehicle today if we get it to 13,000. Then he went to 13,250. And I repeated myself again, I will take the vehicle today if. And then finally we got to 13,050, and he made a smart remark. You're really gonna lose this vehicle over $50? And I jokingly said back to him, you're really gonna lose this sale for $50? And he kind of just shrugged that off. So finally we got down to 13,000. And the scratch piece of paper that we were working off of, he asked me to sign it as good faith so he can go back to his manager, because during this whole time he kept going back and forth to his manager for approval for stuff, you know, that whole thing. So he said, you sign this piece of paper as good faith that you're going to take it for this price. And I was like, I don't see why that's necessary. I'll sign the official documentations once we come to an agreement. So I didn't sign it. I didn't know why he wanted me to sign it. If you know, put something in the comment, let me know, or what you think, why he wanted to sign it, because I had no clue. But still, I wouldn't sign it. So he went back, and then finally, manager said it was all good. We agreed on the 13,000. So I said, great, wonderful, love it. I need one more thing. I need a PPI. What that is a pre-purchase inspection. Now, what you want to do is have a mechanic look at the vehicle, give it a once over, and see if there's any issues before you buy it, because once you buy it, it's your car. So since I knew this going into it, and I know usually it takes about an hour to do all this negotiating back and forth, I scheduled for a mechanic to look at my vehicle within that hour. So everything lined up perfectly. It was like 10 minutes down the way. Great. Now, one thing I want to note is there was some debate about whether you use a local mechanic or a dealership to look at the vehicle. Now, there were pros and cons for both. I ultimately ended up going with the local mechanic. The reason why is some people said that maybe the dealership that you go to may try to sell you a different car and say the car that you're getting is bad. And I really didn't want that. But some people also say that the dealership will know more about the car, they can do better diagnostics, stuff like that. So it's personal preference, but for me, I went with the local mechanic, and I'm fine with that. So I went there, the mechanic checked it out, and then the report came back, you know, the belts They said, eventually those need to be replaced, but he said probably because they were the original, but they're not in bad shape, but you probably want to replace them soon. And then also I asked about the brakes. He said, yeah, the brakes are rusty. That's probably because they've been sitting out for a couple months. I was like, okay, cool. Can you put all that in an estimate, a quote for me? He's like, yeah, he put it all together and I went on my way. So now I went back to the dealership and then I told them, everything went pretty well, but there were some things that the mechanic pointed out. So I told them, I'm not really worried about the belts. It's a used car, normal wear and tear. I'm fine with that. But as I mentioned to you during the test drive, I was worried about the brakes. And they said, there were some issues with the brakes and I consider that a safety issue. And, I don't want to take that off the lot. So what I said was, I don't want the money for it. I just want you to fix it. So the salesperson went back to the manager. They came back and they said, you know what? We don't want to fix it. We'll just give you the money. So it was around $400. So off that $13,000, I got $400 off that. So out the door, I paid $12,600 for the car. And I was pretty happy with that. Could I have done better? Probably. But I'd say everything went verbatim from that script that Car Edge pointed out. It was scary how much that it was exact how it went. So I was actually thoroughly surprised and happy and actually a little bit excited. It was probably had a big grin on my face once we closed the deal. But one final thing, always look at what you're signing. When I was with the finance person wrapping up everything, I noticed that the price still said $13,000. Now what happened, that little scratch piece of paper that we were working off of, the salesperson never wrote down that they were taking off $400 because of the brakes. So that's what the person wrote up was $13,000. Now I don't think they did it maliciously. I think it was just a mistake, but always look at what you're signing because once you sign it, it's yours. So they corrected it. It was real easy and everything worked out really well. So I hope this helped. It was a great experience for me. Let me know what you think or if you had any other advice or anything that you want to add to this to help the community out, put it below. Take care.